Well, hello everybody. We are continuing with our work on the Egoic Lotus. This is program number 10. And we are going to work on some of the different types of lotuses. When it comes to what we've already done, we have done some work from page 201 to 203, and this is already listed here from page 202. The lotuses of revelation of the third degree, the lotuses with perfume of the second degree. At least this is how I hypothesize this. The radiant lotuses beginning at the first degree. The lotuses wherein the flower is on the point of opening. And I think when he talks about the flower, he doesn't simply mean a single petal. So I imagine there are all different kinds of descriptions between radiant lotuses and lotuses wherein the flower is on the point of opening, just as there were listed in the fourth stage of adaptation, selfishness to the nth degree, and then carried forward over several successive stages until the individual was trying to preserve his selfishness without infringing on the rights of others. So I think that between stage 3 and 4 here, we do have quite a number of different categories, and as DK seems to have said, overlapping each other with bewildering complexity. Then we have the lotus of closed and sealed condition. They are not unfolded. See, the very first tier of lotus of petals, the knowledge tier, I assume this is the one where the flower is on the point of opening. Before that, there is no real flower, or at least there may be some opening of the petals, but it's not the flower per se. The lotuses of closed and sealed condition, the question is how much organization of the lotuses is proceeding in this closed and sealed state. It's I assume, an early period, just as the colorless lotuses, which signify that there has not been much experience at all, but the petals have been here of the closed and sealed condition, there's probably stimulation and organization, but the colorless lotuses have not had any quality, or not much, built into them, and probably no organization or stimulation, very little. Lotuses in bud, this is the nascent stage. Nothing has been done. The man is newly individualized. So this is our diagram, and there's so much about it. Yes, this is so interesting the way it's put here. Egoic polarization from individualization until the entry upon the path. And that is where the egoic lotus is focused, on the third subplane of the mental plane, until there is entry upon the path, or until the human being becomes an advanced individual. Egoic polarization here on the second level, the first, second, and third initiations, and as a matter of fact, this is what I understand, that even the fourth initiation is taken with the egoic lotus polarized upon the second subplane of the higher mental plane. And let's just say once the destruction of the causal body has occurred, we are dealing perhaps with beyond the fourth degree and approaching the fifth degree. And there is a reorganization of structures upon the mental plane, I would gather, as it is no longer necessary for the angel of the presence underlying the egoic lotus to provide what we call the chakric power for the man. He has his own chakric power now on the higher mental plane, and we've never been given what the reorganization will be, but we know that when there is the building of the Maya Virupa, there will have to be chakras on every level, including the higher mental level, and there will be no more egoic lotus to provide the power that the chakras must provide. So perhaps it will look something like this. You know, what we have here, we have this triangle above the four, and also on the mental plane, after the destruction of the egoic lotus, we will probably have also a triangle above the four. Of course, these look here. Yes, somehow the spleen seems to be a center here, and the sacral is there, the solar plexus, the base of the spine. What is missing really in this triangle is the ajna center in order to produce the 7 chakras. Interestingly, we noticed that in one of the tabulations, the ajna center was associated with the 4th ray and was listed in the 4th order. So one begins to wonder whether it might not be found on the 4th level. Though since it is a head center, my impression is more that it would be found on one of the subplanes of the highest subplane, whether on the etheric, emotional, or eventually on the higher mental plane. So, as I've said before, each one of these vehicles that is to be coordinated will have its own chakric kind of expression. They are not listed here. It's probably considered fairly secret type of knowledge. But if 35 vortices of force make a master, well, right now you have only here, well, the way it's listed, what you have is you have 18 vortices of force. Eventually, when the egoic lotus disappears, you have to have a triangle replacing it, and we still don't know exactly what to do with the ajna center because that does remain, although it has been said that it is something of a temporary evocation, just the way the sacral center is. So there are some areas of this chakric science that are not yet open to us. At least DK has not opened them to us fully. And how the other chakras would appear on the within the Buddhic vehicle and within the Atmic vehicle, this remains to be seen, but that there should be 35 to make a master, and that a master is basically an Atmic being and has the capability of an Atmic polarization. That seems to be the case, and so the appearance of other chakras, all of them basically coming from the monad, really, if you think of it, all of this chakric power, of course, yes, coming from the monad and working through the soul to produce these chakras, but probably working directly in the triadal vehicles to produce the chakras which have to be created, I suppose, when the vehicle is organized. Now, we're told that the Buddhic vehicle is not completely organized in the early days, and probably following the third initiation, that organization takes place under the influence of the planet Neptune. Perhaps it's then that these chakras would begin to appear, because maybe before that point the vehicle per se has not been used, the Buddhic vehicle. and maybe the atmic vehicle also has not been used, even less so, in fact. So, fourth degree, there is an intuitional Buddhic focus. Fifth degree, there is an atmic focus. Of course, the master can also use Buddhi very definitely. All right, well, that's just some related thoughts. We don't have much going on here on the divine plane, but fortunately, there is the other map on page 344, and this map shows that on the divine plane the three persons of the Trinity can be found. Not much more is elaborated, but there is bound to be, since it's the highest point on Shambhala, and Shambhala is a place or a point of tension of great order and radiance and brilliance and so forth, there's certainly going to be something occurring there that to which we have not yet been given the key. All right, let us now go to these pages in A Treatise on Cosmic Fire. Since we've already covered in the very beginning of this series, when talking about the five groups of, the five origins of groups of souls, whether from the moon chain, the early Lemurian, the early Atlantean, and the rare egos that come in from elsewhere. And how did it go? I think there was, let's see, Adaptation, Egoic Lotus, 5 groups. Let's see if we have this here. Yes, Lemurian egos from Atlantis, egos from the moon chain, egos from other planets. That was it. And rare and advanced egos. What is not really described here is the egos that come in from the previous solar system, the so-called nomads, who wandered from the first major solar system into the second major solar system of our solar logos. So they are not here listed, but DK does take them into consideration. It will be understood by the masters how many there are, but they are probably unlikely to be found in planets other than the Earth, Mars, and Saturn, which have that close connection to the third aspect of divinity. But so what we'll do is look at this very interesting section. We already have certain names of lotuses that are unfolding, and we've seen them here. I've included them from page 202 and 203 of Esoteric Psychology 1. This is EP2, rather. EP2. So a revelation of perfume of radiant, and those lotuses were on the flower is on the point of opening. And when we think of man as he exists on this planet at this time, the lower 3 categories probably are not going to be too relevant, because we're told already that there is that every human being on our planet, no matter by what manner individualized, has at least one petal open. Now, when we talk about open, we don't know whether that means completely unfolded or to what degree open. But it looks like if number 5, the lotuses of closed and sealed condition, it looks as if they could not characterize the human beings on our planet at the present time, because it looks like there is no opening. They are closed and sealed. And if they are closed and sealed, well, certainly the lotuses and bud are absolutely closed and sealed. And the colorless lotuses tells that there have been some incarnations, but nothing significant has been built into them in terms of quality, so they are not open either. So the lower 3 categories, My point is that the lower three categories do not really apply to the type of human being that we have on our planet at this time, because, evolution has been going on for millions of years, and even the Atlanteans, the latest to individualize upon our planet, even they individualized, well, could have been 12 million years ago, or maybe onward toward the end of the Atlantean period. I think we had a reference to that effect, how long they continued to individualize. I'd have to try to find that. But even if they continued to individualize later during the Atlantean period, it would still be, 8 million, 7 million years ago. At a certain point in Atlantis, the door was closed, and no more individualization of that kind could occur. There may be other types of individualization that will occur and will relate more to the sixth root race. But so far, we are told mostly of the early types of individualization. Let's see if there's anything here. There was something here that was quite interesting. Yeah, here are these lotuses that we've been studying. And here are the 10 groups. I'm not sure I'm going to find what I'm looking for here. Yes, initiation. Well, no, this is what I was looking for. Moonshane individualization and the fifth race of the third round, Lemurian individualization, Atlantean individualization, and 4th century they became those who could became initiated. In Atlantis, the door of initiation opened and forced initiation. But it doesn't tell us about those who individualized in Atlantis. Higher up in the reference, it does talk about that. There were types of initiates in each one of those periods. In our race, we find the lights which ever shine. This is the individualization of the 6th race types who came in the second round. And that is very, I would say, enigmatic, because all of the individualization we've been talking about has occurred within the 4th round, at least if it has occurred on our particular planet. And when we have the discussion of moonshane individualization, it's an entirely different sphere of activity. So this seems to imply the second round of our chain. They may have come in, but when will they be individualized? Were they individualized? Maybe I'm missing something obvious here. Will this individualization occur in the 6th race? And yet the door seems to be closed, at least in our round, except for certain of the very advanced animals. So I think there's a lot of ambiguity about this. Suffice it to say, the individualization process is not over, and even though the door is closed until the next round, for the most part, certain of the higher types of animals, we are told, and not necessarily great quantities of them, will be able to undergo individualization in this particular round. So we don't know in what manner they came in the second round, because that is and where the in really is. It could have something to do with being within our planetary scheme, or perhaps our chain from some other source. Whenever I see 6 and 2 together, I immediately begin to think of Venus. So will these be higher types? I'm not sure, but they are This statement is very interesting. It's also interesting that he doesn't really mention here in category 3. He doesn't really mention that individualization occurred. The term individualization is not meant or is not given in relation to Atlantis, and yet we just read that in the early Atlantean days there was individualization. He does mention individualization in Lemurian days and then upon the moon chains. So some information appears to be missing, and I think, there has to be a lot of pondering done here to discover what type of individualization is discussed in point number 4. What I seem to be giving quite a bit of preamble here to our particular study. Let's just say that he has mentioned 3 definite types of lotuses. Radiant ones, he hasn't told how many petals are open, lotuses with perfume, and lotuses of revelation. He has mentioned 3 kinds, and I'm assuming lotuses of revelation have 9 petals open. Lotuses with perfume have the 7th and 8th petal quite open, the 8th petal being reasonably open but not fully until the 3rd initiation is taken. And radiant lotuses, I'm assuming that from the time the 5th petal is completely open, one is initiate of the 1st degree, even though working in the 7th petal, and hence a radiant lotus. And for our work, we can at some point contrast the lights which burn, which radiate, and the lights which ever shine, as they seem to be progressive types of unfoldments that are related to attainments possible in different root races. All righty, now maybe we'll be able to get to what I wanted to discuss. Because some really interesting different names are given in relation to these other types of egoic lotuses. Probably so much is not yet said. Probably every lotus that has a certain number of petals completely open is called by a particular name. And I'm not sure that we have any names for the lotuses which have all, well, maybe all 3 of the lotuses which are on the point that their flower will unfold, but they might be called by other names. I'm not sure we have a name for the lotuses that have 4 petals completely open. When 5 petals are completely open, we have the 1st degree initiate and the beginning of the radiant lotuses. When 6, now this is, my theory, at least, until proven incorrect, one has to theorize in these matters when not every indication is given in a definitive way, when there appear to be gaps in the knowledge. One has to, what else can one do? One theorizes, one proposes, and then awaits further knowledge to confirm or deny what one has proposed. So when 6 petals are completely open, there's work being done in the 8th petal. You have a 2nd degree initiate, and we might call these the lotuses with perfume. When I don't believe, this is my present hypothesis, that the 7th petal or 8th petal, although work is being done on them and the bodhisattva has in some manner directed energy to them through the initiation process, I don't believe that they are completely unfolded until the 9th petal is completely unfolded. And then you will have, when that inner sacrifice tier is completely unfolded, you will have the lotuses of revelation, and that will continue on until the fourth initiation is taken with the progressive unfoldment of the synthesis petals. But actually it says they burst open at a certain point, so I wonder if it's gradual. The word burst is used, and I suppose it's a period immediately before the fourth initiation can be taken. It would be nice to have a list of the names of every type of lotus, but we don't have that in a completely consistent and definitive manner. We have to somewhat piece it together and see if we have everything, and there probably are going to be gaps. Anyway, these are the names of the lotuses. We're basically moving from 840 to 844 here, and some of what is found on 855 and 857 has been transferred into Esoteric Psychology Volume 2, and we've already discussed it. So let's begin. Okay, the names of the egoic lotuses. We might consider briefly the work of forming the egoic lotus on its own plane. Now actually, the amazing thing is that this formation really begins before the moment of individualization. It's already being formed from the time that the animal in whom or in relation to whom that lotus will appear has somehow penetrated or is producing some type of activation upon the mental plane. That is the astonishing thing. Egoic lotus, let's see, if I were to, one of my usual deviations here, I guess, but if I go to AAB extracts and I look up egoic lotus, and let's see what it says. I have a lot of these references, and of course, causal body made of Devic and higher substance, constructed of lesser lives. Egoic lotus, slow in formation. That might be one. Let's just see. The process of forming the egoic lotus has gone on silently from the moment that the lower animal man or the lower four principles had reached a point where the energy generated by him could begin to make itself felt on mental levels. So this is before, I believe, at least before the human being appears. That is precisely the reference that I was looking for. This process of forming the egoic lotus has gone on silently from the moment that the lower animal man or the lower four principles had reached a point where the energy generated by him could begin to make itself felt on mental levels, and even for the animal that is possible. Well, there may be different interpretations of this, but suffice it to say we have to consider the idea that it is slow in formation and may not appear all at once. Okay. The forming the egoic lotus on its own plane, which is the third subplane of what we call the higher mental plane. This as the result of the work of the Agnish Vatas, who are the solar angels, after its segregation in space and the formation of its ring pass not. We might consider briefly the work of forming the egoic lotus on its own plane as a result of the work of the Agnish Vatas after that lotus or that center of energy has been segregated in space. I suppose this would mean, in a way, removed from the group soul. Segregated in space and its formation of its ring and the formation of its ring pass not, because the essence of what will, let's say, form the center of the egoic lotus has existed, in a sense, in the group soul, whereby or through which the monad has been gaining experience in the various kingdoms, the latest of which would be the animal kingdom. And there has to be at least a process of segregation from the group soul in order to create individualization. We have touched upon the remotest and earliest stages. One point we have not yet emphasized, but which is of interest to the thoughtful student, this is the fact of the difference existing between the egoic bodies owing to their varying stages of development. And it would seem, it hasn't been touched upon, but this would seem an obvious difference. For instance, up until the middle of the Atlantean root race, now what would that be, 4.4, let us say, when the door of individualization was closed. See, I suppose the opening of the door of initiation into the fifth kingdom and the closing of the door of individualization, closing it upon the third kingdom, were events that occurred relatively close to each other in time. They are, let us say, I think, in the planetary plan, related events. Egos were to be seen at many different stages, from the newly organized buds, organized by the Agnishvatas, under the impress of the human monad, or at least in cooperation with it, organized by the Agnishvatas, the newly organized bud, and representing freshly individualized men, all the way to the highly developed causal bodies of the different disciples and initiates who were superintending the evolution of the race. And of course, what is said here, what is implied, is that masters were not the ones who were superintending, because the masters would not have had the causal body. By the time the fourth initiation occurs, the causal body has been destroyed. So these are initiates maybe up to the third degree and a bit beyond, and they are supervising the progress of the race, no doubt in touch with the masters who know and see even more. So there were bud egos, and we saw that lotuses in bud. Yes, that's what they were called. There were these lotuses, lotuses in bud at those times in Middle Atlantis. And when would Middle Atlantis have been? Well, maybe 8 million years ago, something like that, because early Atlantean times were considered to be 12 million years ago. And, somewhere in there, 6 million years ago. The Great War was probably fought 4 million years ago. It was a little bit later, perhaps, than Middle Atlantis, strictly speaking. Probably in initiation was occurring, and this was one of the reasons that precipitated the war, because the forces of obstruction did not want to see the light grow too intense. So, but what I would say here is that for maybe a still more educated opinion, consult Philip Lindsay's HHH, the history of humanity, the hidden history of humanity. Consult that book and him, and he has worked these matters out in quite detail as to what Middle Atlantis actually would be in terms of its years. He has more, I think, of the specifics. So up until the middle of the Atlantean root race, when the door of individualization was closed, and certainly it had to be closed by the time we reached 4.5, definitely, because initiation was occurring, and maybe it was already opening. The door to initiation was already opening in 4.4. When we look at the two fours together, we think, well, that's a really good time for a war, because the fourth ray is the warring ray, and humanity is the warring kingdom. And so this could have been even 5 or 4 million years ago, anywhere from 8 to 4, something like that, million years ago. Seems to me to be Middle Atlantis, with early Atlantis being anywhere from 12 million years ago to 8 million years ago. And then we have the later Atlantean period, during the period following, from 4 million years ago until the present. There is an overlap, even though there are many Atlanteans still present, even in bodily form. And although it's not the Atlantean age, because the Aryan age has begun, we certainly do have the residuals of the age of Atlantis, definitely. Egos were to be seen at many differing stages, from the newly organized buds, lotuses and bud, representing freshly individualized men, and again, under the impulse of the solar angels, presumably, under the impulse of the solar angels, because all individualization on our planet seems to involve the cooperation of the solar angels, and not by the method used on the moon chain or even apparently in the previous solar system. All the way to the highly developed causal bodies of the different disciples and initiates who were superintending the evolution of the race. And apparently you don't have to be a master to be a leader in this superintending process. So quite a variety of different egoic displays. Now, the egoic bodies might be grouped from the evolutionary standpoint as follows. On the third subplane of the mental plane. Now, remember, this is very important. The radiant lotuses, the lotuses with perfume, the lotuses of revelation, they will all be grouped on the second subplane of the mental plane, because they are at the point where the initiatory process has begun and where advanced man is really taking over. I saw one reference, obviously I can't go hunting for every reference, but it suggested that when the human being reached the stage of the advanced human being, and it's still a somewhat ambiguous term, that the centralization of the egoic lotus would change subplanes and move to the second. So much depends on what is meant by the term advanced. So anyway, on the third subplane, and this is where it all starts, because when individualization occurs through the intervention of the Agnishvatas, and even if it were to occur through this working up from below and a great upreaching towards the spirit, it would still probably centralize on the third subplane, which relates to the matter aspect. We have the bud egos. Our planetary scheme, being at the midway point in its evolution, there are therefore no unopened buds, strictly speaking. Now, it seems to imply that there are some fairly undeveloped egos, and that there must be some movement, some development in the bud to make it other than the bud, strictly speaking. He's going to tell us here just a moment, I believe. Yes. So there are open buds, apparently. All the egoic lotuses have at least one petal open, but my question has been here, how far open? It doesn't necessarily mean completely unfolded. All the lotuses are organized. Well, I think we have to be very careful here, because it doesn't necessarily mean that all of the higher petals are organized, but that there is some organization that has occurred at least in the first petal and maybe toward the second, even though the first may not be fully opened. So one has to be careful with the language. He uses the term strictly speaking to mean an exactly freshly individualized human being. And there are none now, but there were then in Middle Atlantean times. We are in the fourth focus of our planetary logos, fourth chain, fourth globe, fourth round, and we've moved even beyond the midway point for the unfoldment on our planet, which would be the fourth root race, and we are beyond that. So no more freshly individualized egos, but somewhat open. All egoic lotuses have at least one petal open, and we don't know whether the word open means fully open. It could be somewhat open. All the lotuses are organized. The question is, are they completely organized all the way to the highest level? I doubt that. But there are vast differences among those of small development, showing forth in the brilliancy of the permanent atoms, which are found at the bottom of the flower in terms of the description we're given, and in the stage of petal unfoldment. The brilliancy of the permanent atoms and the stage of petal unfoldment. So even if you were to give the same, let's say, fairly advanced modern physical vehicle of the Aryan root race type to two different individuals whose lotuses were vastly different in their unfoldment, you would have no reason to expect that the type of expression operating through those fifth root race type bodies would be the same, because the inner being is much less unfolded, and so could not take the inner being of the one who has lesser unfoldment could not take advantage of the possibilities of such a vehicle. And actually, Blavatsky made this same type of point, though in slightly different words. So this is a type of ego which no longer exists. There are some that are close to this stage, but there is some opening, and there's definitely organization in that first petal. And who knows, maybe all types have some degree of organization even in the second petal. And when there is organization, there is response along the lines of activity and experience that that particular petal is associated with. So organization doesn't simply mean that there's no activity related to the petal that's being organized. It's just a lesser type of activity than when the petal is completely really in the process of unfolding and opening. Then you will have a greater demonstration of the qualities and activities which are to be associated with that petal. Well, all of this, we can come to a lot of understanding about the process even before we have the accurate clairvoyance which will allow us to read the record, to see the petal, the lotus, in its processes of unfoldment over time, over many millions of years. One can understand that one can look at an individual, see the lotus, and then take it back to an earlier time, and an earlier time, and an earlier time, and see what was the mode of unfoldment of that particular individual. Okay, so for those with the right type of clairvoyance, there'll be quite a difference in the Egoic Lotus demonstration in terms of the brilliancy of the members of the atomic triangle. We're not here talking about the monastic permanent atom, but of the mental unit, the astral permanent atom, and the physical permanent atom, and in the stages, or stage of petal unfoldment, or the degree of petal unfoldment, the degree to which the the vortices, which are the petals, are demonstrating in pulsation, rapidity of vibration, scintillation, color, even sound. The next category are called the Brahmic Lotuses. So these Brahmic Lotuses are said to have the first or knowledge petal fully unfolded. And this would bring us to this kind of picture. This would be the petal. Interesting how it's drawn here, that it seems to be the lowest of the knowledge petals, and it has three colors of the fifth, third, and seventh rays. All of those are interesting, of course, the types of rays that are represented by the colors, but we'll get into that as we go along. Now, fully unfolded is, I think, a different category. Not all lotuses are necessarily Brahmic lotuses. They have not all yet achieved that status. So there can be those which are connected with the bud stage. There are no unopened buds, strictly speaking. They have at least one petal open. But having at least one petal open is not the same as having the first or knowledge petal fully unfolded. So although we might think that the Brahmic lotuses are the first category of lotuses that we can deal with, apparently there are some of even earlier development. And what I would guess, of course, the opening of the petals has much to do with the kind of advantage one has taken of the opportunities offered. But it also has to do with the timing and the incoming of the different groups. So if there's going to be individualization in the Atlantean period, maybe up to the middle of the Atlantean period when the door was closed, then some of those who are most lately individualized could still be in this category of not quite Brahmic lotuses. Now, there is something to consider here, because when the solar angel is involved in the individualization, there's going to be more rapid development. But there are some groups, as we saw in human group number 1 and human group number 2, who are likely not to have had the spark of mind from the solar angel implanted. In other words, the solar angel is not actually connected with them, but has done some work in fanning the spark, or fanning the flame, or stimulating the mental unit until individualization could occur. So we have some human beings today who have no solar angel per se. They are not supervised in the same way that many of us are supervised. So the question arises regarding the type of individualization which occurred in Atlantean times. Was this the strict, the method of implanting the solar angelic essence within the man, or was it the method of fanning the spark, or or stimulating the mental unit. In other words, did all types of individualization in the later period, that is Middle Atlantean times, from early to Middle Atlantean times, did all types of individualization involve the investment of the solar angel within the animal man of the period? And presumably, even in Atlantis, there was some sort of animal man that was the recipient of the individualizing force. So did all acts of individualization involve the investment of the solar angel, or did some acts of individualization involve simply the stimulation of that which was inherent in man, and which could undertake then its own development because it had been sufficiently stimulated, the mental unit had been sufficiently stimulated to cause a type of individualization. The egoic lotus then would have to be formed in a different manner. So back in Lemurian times, we know there were both types of individualization methods occurring. The investment of the solar angels in the animal man, and for those who were less developed, simply their stimulation. But nowhere is it said that those who were simply stimulated do not have an egoic lotus or a causal body. So the method of formation must be different because it is not substanded by the solar angels. For modern man and more advanced man, the solar angel has taken its place, so to speak, within the egoic lotus. It has formed the egoic lotus out of its substance. But for the less evolved, who have only been the spark has been fanned, as it were, the solar angel cannot be invested in their egoic lotus in the same way it is for the more advanced man in whom the solar angel is participating. So that is something, reading between the lines here, we can wonder about the history of those groups now who are the least developed human beings. And they are found in among the aboriginals, which is not to say that all aboriginals are, of course, among the Bushmen, at least according to classical theosophy, among the Vedas of Ceylon, and the Ainus of Japan. Those are four groups that are mentioned. When did they individualize? Apparently, the solar angel is not part of their process, and they are proceeding by their own methods. So the question is here about these Brahmic lotuses. They would seem to be man individualized by the solar angel at a relatively late point. But some of those who do not even have one petal fully unfolded would be those who were individualized even later. And if there is not one petal fully unfolded, the question arises about the method of the individualization, because when the solar angels are involved in the individualization, there's always a more rapid progress. HPB called us, or those of us who are associated with the solar angel, as hothouse plants, as if we were artificially cultured and our growth was forced by a particular method. When you take certain types of plants and you put them in the hothouse, they grow more rapidly because the climate is protected and they are surrounded by the environmental factors and by a certain kind of feeding of them, which promotes their growth. If they're outside the hothouse, they have to proceed with their growth on their own. So there are many things to straighten out here, and all we know is the generalities of the different methods of individualization, and that even some on our planet were not individualized by the solar angelic method. But maybe if there is one petal completely unfolded, maybe that does say that the solar angelic method has been used, or maybe not. We don't know for sure. So I think the point is clear. There are some lotuses that have at least one petal open, but there are some lotuses for whom the first petal is fully unfolded, and I think there is a distinction. They are so called as they represent on the physical plane the fully active, intelligent unity. Mental development, of course, begins from the time individualization occurs, but they are the man of small mental development. They're not yet mental per se. There's no way that they are focusing in the mind, but they can use a mind for other things. The lowest types of workers, agriculturalists, and I suppose by that he means the labor that is simply hired in agriculture, not the people who are planning the farms and so forth, and peasants on every continent. And I've mentioned here that Saturn, giving the Earth boundedness, and Capricorn is both are in effect. They are also called third-class creators, as they express themselves only through the act of physical creation on the physical plane, and their function is largely to provide vehicles for those of their own group. And I think we can understand that they have the sacral center strongly developed. The base of the spine center, of course, is operative for everyone and would be operative in this first group. They are Earth humanity. They do not come from the moon chain. They do not create art. They create other physical bodies by the lowest method of creation, which is procreation. This then is a fairly Lemurian stage. We can link it with some of the categories we have studied. The five groups a little bit earlier, the 10 groups rather, we find, let's see, no, I think it's earlier. That's where it is. Okay. In these 10 groups, we will find, let's see, I'm sorry to take your time here. Okay. I haven't gone back far enough, have I? Oh, there we go. All right. Yes, here they are. It's group number 2 especially. It has to do with, it's seldom be trained along any mental line. The natural instincts of the body, of the animal body, eat, dig and carry under direction. They eat, sleep, and procreate and follow the natural instincts of the animal body. So the second group of souls, the second group of human souls, are found in relation to the Brahmic Lotuses, I think we could say. And when it comes to the stages of adaptation, we seem to be working with the first stage of adaptation, the unconscious adaptation to the environment of the man who is primarily the unintelligent animal, purely agricultural peasants who have not been subjected to modern education, and he says low-grade savages. Of course, the language here is an older type of language and is not considered the best kind of language in which to write today. But I think our purpose is simply to make this correlation, and we find that the Brahmic lotuses are associated very much with work with the earth, fairly unthinking, fairly routine work with the earth, a lot of the seventh ray repetitive action involved here, and people who have not had, they're inclined not to use the mind. They're inclined to live a very elemental life, and even the unfoldment of emotions is not the main thing. It's a very earth-bound life, even though it has one petal fully unfolded, and that has probably unfolded over millions of years. The earliest petals unfold much more slowly than the later petals, and it can represent really the Lemurian experience, not so much the Atlantean experience, because the Atlantean experience was emotional, and this is not an emotional response. This involves Saturn, it involves Mars, in terms of physical activity in dense matter. All right. Let's go on to another type, which are somewhat more advanced. The Lotuses of Brahman. Well, it's kind of interesting because Brahman has the connotation of wisdom, and it may involve the second petal, not the first, and there is a latent wisdom connotation. At least some other aspect of divinity is being added to the picture. We have the strictly physical life here. Whether we have what we can call the aboriginal life, I don't know. Maybe the aboriginal life is found more in these open petals, but not fully opened, associated with the bud. But or perhaps in the beginning of Brahmic lotuses, the aboriginal life is found there. But it would seem that when dealing with the aboriginals, the Vedas, the Bushmen, the Ainus of Japan, they have a different source for their individualization. But certainly by the time we reach the lotuses of Brahman, we have those who are, I would say, individualized by the solar angels, though perhaps not among the first to be individualized. The second petal is showing signs of opening. So there has been organizational work here, and it's gone even further to the point of opening. Millions of years can separate these first two categories. And the second aspect in its lowest manifestation, the magnetic, attractive, love, desire aspect, is showing signs of demonstration. So a kind of use of the Martian energy for attraction, and especially Venus, because this is attraction between the forms. They stand, and now this is really interesting. I think you'll find this interesting. They stand as representing certain groups of egos from certain planetary schemes, notably Jupiter and Venus. And so we could expect that they are second-ray monads. We referred to the earlier groups that individualized on our Earth chain as 70 in Lemuria as 75% second ray monads and 25% third ray monads, still having that connection with the moon chain, though not coming from the moon chain. Now, what does he mean by egos? Does this mean that they were, does the word ego mean monad? That's the question here. Were these monads that were brought in, and were they individualized on our planet for certain types of learning? It does not seem that they would have been brought in with the causal body already formed. Because when we think about the moon chain, a number of those who came in from the moon chain had several petals open. Maybe not the majority. As I said, they were a very low development and would not even be equal now to the development of our lowest types if they had not been stimulated, probably by association with the solar angel, once they came into our Earth globe, into our chain and Earth globe. So it's clear that the monad came from Jupiter or Venus. Why? We don't know. Whenever there's a transference to various planets, it's all for the sake of learning something or acquiring something which that planet possesses. So the second ray is in evidence here, and the planets involved, Jupiter with its second ray soul, we don't know about its monadic ray, possibly the seventh, and what the higher monadic ray may be. One would not want to guess, but he is the king of the gods, so, is there the first ray there? But anyway, the second ray is strongly there. And Venus, it's pretty well calculated that Venus has the sixth ray monad with an ultimate second ray monad. So let's just say there's a lot of the second ray working through Jupiter and Venus, and we're dealing with the second petal and the evidence of the second aspect, which is love as expressed through dense form. So the likelihood that these are second ray monads is very strong. They are who are of a grade higher, one grade higher than the class above, but which as yet have a long way to go. And it's pretty clear that some of these groups will not reach their achievement in this round, I suspect. We will examine that in a few minutes and see when we think that achievement might be possible. They are not third-class creators, they are second-class creators. For though they demonstrate on the physical plane in the act of physical creation, and let us say, the sacral center will still be very active, yet they are more swayed by love than by animal instinct, as in the first case. And this is very important because the beginning of the love impulse, which is not strictly instinctual, is seen among them. So the animal instinct has this reference pretty much to petal 1, and love beyond the animal instinct, which does not mean that the animal instinct is yet spent, of course not. But love associated with petal 2, and of course it fits in terms of the aspects. They are to be found incarnating at this time in the Orient, particularly in India and in the Latin countries. So in the Orient, more so India than China, let us say. Interesting that China has a very strong intelligence aspect associated with it. and in the Latin countries of, I suppose, South America, and just lately, interestingly, in America itself. So America being the heir to the sixth ray civilization and the Piscean civilization is attracting also many of those people who have not yet developed the mental faculty, but the America's rays are the second and the sixth. So along the love line, this group of second-class creators demonstrating the second aspect and probably being of a monadic quality which is expressed through the second ray, America would be a good destination. And of course this will create a very huge span of requirements in America, which is also the home to many of a very high intellect, possibly because of the Second World War. Well, not only because of the Second World War, but much of the cream of European intellect came to America for safety and had quite an effect. So he does not tell us that the second petal is fully open. And one of our group members here, he talked about the mass effect in India. Not being able to reason, there's a certain instinctive cunning in begging, so we remember the second level of adaptation, some manipulation to get results, okay, but thinking per se does not order the thought, and there is the strong religious and devotional aspect. This is one of our group that had traveled to India and saw this kind of demonstration. So as the mind develops, one has some objectivity upon oneself, and that's not to be expected here. And friction is coming when you deviate from your vision of yourself. But this is not what we are having at this case of the Lotuses of Brahman. So, and these first two groups, of which in the second group there are many of these people. They don't even have the second petal really opening. It's showing signs. How does it say? The second petal is showing signs of opening, but it's not yet opening. Obviously, it is organized. As DK said, all the petals are organized. I think he especially means in the knowledge tier, and this would mean that there is some activity in the knowledge tier for these types, even along the line of the second petal, even though it's not fully open. So many people on our planet, what to gather out of this, do not even have two petals open. The future for these people, though, because of their origin, Jupiter and Venus, would seem to be very loving, and it would seem that during the sixth root race, opportunity for considerable unfoldment along their line would be available. Jupiter and Venus are both of them associated with the numbers 2 and 6, and they rule globes in our chain, which could be considered from the occult or mystical point of view either a 2 or a 6, depends on how one looks at it. They change their numbers depending on whether it's mystical or occult, but those numbers are reinforced, and love is being cultivated. And I think, when one thinks of America and one thinks of South America, one thinks of the emotional sensitivity and the power of love. Let us look at the rays of Brazil, which are the fourth ray soul and the second ray personality. Here we have definitely future development in the sixth root race along the soft ray line. And in general, Spain had such a powerful Sagittarian array connected with its soul, and it gravitated towards South America, where it made an impress for better or for worse, and there has to be a reason for that gravitation, and I think the Sagittarian mode is very strong in the South American countries, and one even thinks of some of the indigenous people and their hunting habits in relation to Sagittarius. So there is Sagittarius is the primary sixth ray sign at this time, and I suspect the time is a long time. And there is the emergence through Sagittarius of a strong emotional sixth ray response. So Lotuses of Brahman, where the second petal is showing signs of opening, but it is not really open. And that's the second category, second-class creators, but there is movement beyond instinct. Now, it's not always possible to find in the groups exactly a correspondence, the 10 human groups and the 8 stages of adaptation, because the second-class creators, well, you cannot say that they are in the second group of souls entirely, because it says here of the second group of souls that emotionally they are asleep, and that doesn't sound like those who are beginning to love, does it? But remember that a petal unfolds over a very long period of time, and these early petals, millions of years, so the beginning stage and the later stage can be very different. Maybe some of those in the third group who have the desire nature strongly activated. It doesn't say much about love here, though. Will be related to these lotuses of Brahman, and maybe even to a certain extent the modern Atlanteans, who are largely emotional. Again, it doesn't say anything about love. They are largely emotional, but so is this group that is demonstrating more of love. So maybe something of the, not completely, but something of the third and fourth human groups can relate to this Lotuses of Brahman. Does the modern Atlantean have the love petal of the knowledge tier totally unfolded? Well, perhaps later. See, this is an earlier stage, and the emotional civilization of Atlantis probably had a very great deal of that that second petal unfolded. So we have to keep the historical sense and the span of time that it takes to develop. These are still, well, I don't know if one can call them primitive in the sense of relating to the earth. I think they have a greater sense of development, but education and mental culture are not yet much part of the picture, but given how much knowledge is now available and the tremendous emphasis upon knowledge at this time, I would say there's a lot of opportunity for the Lotuses of Brahman. Sometimes when you use the word Brahman, it doesn't mean Brahma at all. What it really means is the great nameless deity, Brahman, Para-Brahman, the absolute, the principle. But it doesn't mean that here. It suggests something of the Brahmins of India who were known for their wisdom. And there was a type of religion, Brahmanism, and it produced many sages, even though it was, says the Tibetan, primarily a first-ray religion. Well, you know, we have the outline here, and I would say there are many things to fill in, but it is very interesting because some of the monads from from other planets are showing up here on Earth. They may show up as monads, colored by the planet from which they came, and then take individualization. With only, it seems very unlikely, although I suppose it's possible, that these lotuses of Brahman are showing up as egos with one petal open, somehow developed on their native planet. But who knows what the conditions may be, or whether such a development would accord very well with the development of Earth. I prefer to think of them as monads who came from Jupiter and Venus and who undertook soul development or individualization, egoic lotus development on our planet. And these could well have been in the Lemurian days, and not in the Atlantean days at all. In other words, the earlier the individualization took place on our planet, the farther one is likely to go in one's development, as seen at this time. When we look at the earliest group, the Brahmic Lotuses, you wonder whether this type of individualization did not occur in Atlantean times, giving them less time to evolve. And interestingly, even though that individualization might have occurred in Atlantis, so many of them still seem to express the Lemurian traits of being very close to the earth, very elemental man. There's no place else for our present Aborigines, Vedas, Ainus, and Bushmen to come from. They can't have come from the moon chain. That would have been far too much development. So they have to have come from individualization process right here on our own planet. And the likelihood is that the later the stage of individualization, the less developed they would be. So the least developed, I mean, at least it makes sense that the least developed of those we find on the earth at the present time must have been the most recently individualized, and then therefore closer to the period when the door on the then animal kingdom was shut. All right. There's so much more I wish I knew, and so much more I wish I could say about this, but one day we'll have the chance to study with very great precision the records, and we will also be able to see for ourselves the Akashic records and work in the libraries where all of this is stored. And then we'll have more than a reasoned and theoretical picture of how this unfoldment took place. So it seems pretty clear that among the Brahmic Lotuses we're not talking about other planets. They are an Earth humanity without other origins. Although you do really begin to wonder, with the Earth being a non-sacred planet which does not last throughout the entire Mahamanvantara, whether every type of monad that finds its way to Earth for development, well, does not come from basically another planet, you know. Basically, Earth will disappear at a certain point, but we who are monads undergoing development on the Earth will not necessarily disappear at all, uh, will be absorbed into other planets, and those planets will still be absorbed. The subtle principles of those planets will be absorbed into still other planets, and so on. And maybe in retracing our steps, we will see and understand where we did come from. That's the question. Are there any monads that are strictly speaking only of the earth, or because it is a sacred, non-sacred planet, will all monads undergoing development here necessarily have come from a planet which lasts longer or existed earlier? Venus, it is said, is a planet that lasts throughout the entire Mahamanvantara, but that's kind of interesting because Venus, halfway through the evolution of our solar system, and that's where we are, just check out page 384 of Cosmic Fire, halfway through, Venus is almost finished with its round development. Of course, there can be internal types of development, but yet we are told that it is a planet that lasts throughout the Mahamanvantara, yet it's almost complete. So, at least complete in one way. Maybe there are other ways that it has to be complete. So there's still a lot to be determined how this can be so. The Earth apparently will not last throughout the entire Mahamanvantara. The question is, did it come in at the very beginning of the Mahamanvantara? And what about those other non-sacred planets like Mars and Pluto and so forth? Are they planets that last throughout the entire Mahamanvantara, or are they more like non-sacred Earth? Well, you know, the further you go, the more questions arise, and you find yourself in the need of deeper and deeper study from sources that may not yet have been made available to us, but one day could be and probably will be if there is a need for such consultation because of the work that we have to do. Now we come to a very interesting category. They're called primary lotuses. You kind of wonder about the reason for the word primary. There has to be a reason, of course, and I'm not sure that he really explains what that reason might be. They are a group of special interest brought in under the influence of the Lord of the Fifth Ray, and therefore fundamentally allied to the energy which is the special manifestation in this system, this solar system, and the basis of all achievement, and that is Manas. Why would that be, we might wonder? And, you know, perhaps because our solar logos is seeking cosmic mental polarization, because he's not yet cosmic mentally polarized, so he is still astrally polarized but working towards cosmic mental polarization. In other words, our solar logos is developing Manas. Obviously, he has great Manas when we consider what a human being has, or even a planetary logos, but from the cosmic perspective, he is developing Manas. So the Lord of the Fifth Ray, and that's the influence. Now, does this necessarily mean that these lotuses came from a planet in which the fifth ray was somehow dominant, or that the fifth ray supervised and brought them in? When you think about planets that have the fifth ray, you think of Venus, of course. You also think of Mercury, but it's rather an advanced planet. To an extent, Vulcan, in its relation to concretion, suggests the fifth ray. Saturn can be considered the lord of concrete mind. among its rays are not necessarily the fifth ray, though we don't really know the mental ray of Saturn. We know Uranus as well has a powerful fifth ray. It's associated with so many electrical phenomena. So when you have electricity demonstrating, the fifth ray, as it's related to the first ray, perfect Uranus connection, will be demonstrating. And interestingly enough, that when the fifth ray types are applying different methods of healing, they often use electrical methods. So we have a connection here with Fohat, with electricity, but we still don't know necessarily the origin of these beings. Even Mars, with its orange color, has, I believe, a strong fifth ray. It's associated with so many fives. Mars is associated with the five senses, and also associated with the five, with the lower concrete mind. But it would be hard for me to believe, given the nature of these primary lotuses, that they are from Mars. We do know they're not from Earth. So it's under the influence, at least, of the fifth ray, and therefore fundamentally allied to the energy, which is the special manifestation in this system. And that's very interesting statement. It just has to be because of the development of our solar logos, and not because our solar logos has those rays. Our solar logos is a very, very much on the 2, 4, 6 line, and but only his stage of development would indicate the necessity for Manas. Now they were quiescent during the Atlantean root race. When it says quiescent, the question is, were they even here? Did they individualize? Did they individualize on Earth, or did they individualize in the place from which they came? So, if they were quiescent in the Atlantean root race, were they quiescent in Lemuria? Because it was very much the 3, 5, 7 line that was developing in Lemuria, the ritual of the physical body, the necessary activity of the third ray to learn the environment, and the mere fact of individualization involves a fifth ray process, the coming in of the solar angels with their very strong fifth ray and seventh ray component. But have come in. So if they were quiescent in Atlantis, quiescent is a funny word, because coming in seems to suggest perhaps coming in to our planetary scheme. Or does it mean showing up and becoming prominent? In any case, they came in during the fourth and fifth subraces of this root race. And now we're talking about, this is the fifth root race. The, okay, fifth root race. So during the fourth and fifth subraces of this root race. Now, that's during the last, let's just say during the last 500,000 years, if we count conventionally that a root race can last 250,000 years. Of course, I think it's a very crude figure, but it may well be, give a hint. So during the last, let us say, 500,000 years, which would make them relatively new arrivals on our planet. Now, we don't know when monads or even partially developed egos are coming in from other places, whether they might be stored or spend time in a certain area of our planetary scheme. I mean, these figures are entirely beyond our ken. But in terms of participating in humanity, taking physical bodies, I think that's what it means by coming in. So I'll put that down, probably taking physical bodies and incarnating. That's what I think coming in means. Now, how long they've been associated with our planetary chain certainly remains to be seen. Okay, so it's so interesting because they're associated with number 5, and I wouldn't be at all surprised, when you look at number 4 and number 5 together, there's a lot of Mercury involved here. Now, of course, the kind of work that they do could be considered Mercurian in some degree, but not fully. Not fully. Other planets are involved, and I especially think we have to look at Vulcan. I think monads come in from different places, and when we take a cursory look at the kinds of monads that there are, we might get the sense of the origin of these monads. The Earth may be pretty well a temporary home to monads that originated elsewhere. That has yet to be confirmed. I'm sure it's so in certain cases, especially if the Earth will not last throughout the entire Mahamanvantara, but will be absorbed, its subtle principles absorbed into another planet. I've sometimes thought that Pluto is absorbed. The subtle principles of Pluto are absorbed into its alter ego Mars. Mars may be absorbed into the Earth, Earth into Venus, and Venus, although it could be temporarily absorbed into greater Saturn, seems to have a destination connected with Neptune. Well, we're getting ahead of ourselves because that absorption may be trillions of years in the future. I wonder if it impresses us how we're just learning the ABCs of this vast and tremendous science that we call the ageless wisdom, the source of true knowledge. So much of our vaunted knowledge, as interesting as it may be in our own tiny little sphere, is minuscule compared to what is to be known on our planet, in our solar system. Just stopping there would be enough. We have discovered stars, galaxies, families of galaxies, quasars, all supernovas, all of these astronomical factors that we are now registering. But what we know about the inner workings of any of those events or bodies, structures, we know nothing. We don't even know much about the inner working of our own planet and the logos who stands behind it. So our knowledge of subjective life is very, very limited, and one only has to read Cosmic Fire with care to discover that this is the case, and in all humility proceed to learn, even if it takes thousands and thousands of years. How many thousands of years did it take to make such a great student of the wisdom as Master D.K.? Well, since he was connected with Pythagoras 2,500 years ago, he must have been studying for at least 2,500 years, and of course, obviously that wasn't even the beginning, because he had reached a very high stature in his own right by that time. So for those of us who are new to the wisdom, let us be prepared to study for a long time, hopefully by ever improving methods and with ever more revelatory sources. Okay, they are a group a good deal more advanced than the earlier classes. A good deal more advanced, because take a look, the first group, Brahmic Lotuses, one petal open, the second group, one petal open, and the second petal on the point of showing signs of opening, and opening doesn't occur all at once either, does it? So they are a good deal more advanced than the earlier classes, but need much to develop the second petal. You might even wonder whether their second petal is as well developed as the Lotuses of Brahman, who are showing signs of love beyond strictly physical instincts. So a higher type of social order is possible to the Lotuses of Brahman than was possible to the Brahmic Lotuses. I remember when I was a kid, maybe 10 to 12 years old, I used to spend a lot of time in the Museum of Natural History in Chicago. It was called, at that time, the Field Museum. And there was also a parallel museum called the Rosenwald Museum, which was the Museum of Science and Industry. And I used to like to go to both places, but what was most interesting to me was the Field Museum over the Museum of Science and Industry. I suppose I was showing the predilection of my rays at that time. And I remember I used to go through all the exhibits and spend a lot of time in the mummy room, you know. I don't know how much affiliation I have with Egypt, but at the time it seemed like the place to be. And I remember going through a hall, a rather large hall, which was seemed to be dedicated entirely to the different ethnic groups found upon the earth, the different races, I think, to a degree, and different ethnicities. And I was fascinated by it. I think I understood very little, being 10 or 11 years old, or even younger, but all the different types of, not all, but many of the different types of human beings seem represented in their, through sculpture, through these bronze sculptures, metallic sculptures, in their natural habitat and their natural dress and doing the kinds of things they did, and with the physical structure and facial structure being representative of who they were. And I was just realizing that a kind of understanding of the different types of human beings was beginning to dawn on me at that time through that particular exposure. I'd love now, 60 years later, to go back to that museum. You know, it's one of the best in the country, and certainly in Chicago, and see what their exhibits are like, and get the sense of how to understand what is given there after 50 years of study of esotericism. Anyway, that's on my bucket list. Okay, so they have much to develop the second petal. They're connected with the fifth ray. They have a kind of second petal, we called it privation, because Earth humanity, under the second ray soul of Earth, will naturally develop the second petal. Our Earth is astrally polarized and has not achieved certain decisive battles, a victory in certain decisive battles on the cosmic astral plane. We have a very strong emotionality connected with our planetary logos. I wouldn't even be surprised if the astral body of the earth. Well, it's a big speculation, but it's certainly not the second ray yet. It's got to be either 4 or 6 or 6 or 4. So with them, with these primary lotuses, the first and third petals in the first circle are opening. This is interesting because this is maybe not the same as fully unfolded. So maybe the experience of these people relative to the very dense physicality of Earth is not as full as the Brahmic lotuses. You have to watch every word the Tibetan says, assuming that Alice Bailey was very faithful and that DK was supervising very carefully what was being written down. Certainly we know he did in the book Esoteric Astrology, because Alice Bailey didn't know much astrology, and we would expect in this mammoth seed volume that we're calling Treatise on Cosmic Fire that he would also be scrupulously careful. So the difference between open, fully opened, opening, all these things situate a process in time. So the third petals are in the process of opening. So intelligence is there with that third petal, and ability to adapt to the earth and its particular materials, circumstances is there with the first petal. But we've oftentimes seen rather fifth-ray people who are as if very at home in the realm of the mind, but not particularly at home on our planet in terms of the normal physical things that one has to do. They're even a little awkward concerning those things, though they probably have a closer connection to those types of physical things than they do to emotional response, which is more of a void. So with them, the first and third petals in the first circle are opening, but the middle petal is yet shut. And even with the Lotuses of Brahman, we cannot say that the middle petal is, well, we can't call it shut. Shut is a drastic word. What DK said about it here in the Lotuses of Brahman, the second petal is showing signs of opening. And this is quite a contrast from saying it's just shut. Okay. The middle tier also shows no sign of vitality, not of being stimulated or being organized, and so these people do not have the social sense developing. And some of the others that are of our earth humanity, they might have some kind of vitality or work, organizational work being done. Maybe the next group especially, the Lotuses of Passion and Desire, might have some of work or vitalization going on. We oftentimes see that these are very skeptical people. Now, this occurs to me for the first time, perhaps. Also, very skeptical on the fifth ray, the concrete fifth ray. And this skepticism about a higher power is interesting because there's no sign of vitality in the second circle of petals, where the higher of the pairs of opposites begins to come into sense, into view, into some sort of registration. So maybe that's the reason, because, petals 4, 5, and 6, we begin to say, look, there is a higher power. There's something else going on here. I don't necessarily know what it is. But these people say, no, if it's not connected with the senses, it's not real. And it's the vitalization of the second tier which is allowing a higher of the pairs of opposites to be registered. The lower the pairs of opposites, obviously our personality life and everything that the senses reveal of that. Owing to conditions in their emanating planet, okay, so there we have the idea of monadic emanation. Can lotuses emanate, per se, if they are already constructed? I'm not sure. Anyway, monads emanate. It's interesting that he uses, he could have said their planet of origin, but he said their emanating planet. Owing to conditions in their emanating planet, their development has been one-sided. We might say along the line of form, right? And hence they're entering on a wave of energy into this scheme in order to round themselves out, as it is called. Now, they are under the supervision of the fifth ray. How does it say here? The Lord of the fifth ray, under the influence of the Lord of the fifth ray. Is it our fifth ray Lord, or is it a fifth ray Lord in the solar system, a greater fifth ray Lord? Mercury has a lot to do with the fifth ray. But we said, well, could they come from Venus? But probably not, because Venus has the fifth ray. But look at the kinds of monads that came from Venus. They are of the love type, and they are working in a petal at the present time in which love is emerging. So Venus's second and sixth ray are so strong on the monadic level that it ultimately overpowers its fifth ray. Could they be coming from Mercury? Well, Mercury has a lot of the third and fifth ray. It also has the fourth ray in its soul. And, if they were not yet responding to the soul ray of their planet, then we could say, well, okay, maybe they came from Mercury, but it seems that, well, Mercury is always associated with number 5 and with the hand and the 5 fingers on the hand and so forth, but it would seem that Mercury has more in its lower nature of the third ray. Now, I'm not sure about its mental ray. Its personality seems to be more the third. It's sort of the it encourages manipulation and dishonesty, and it's the patron god of thieves. The people with animal cunning, those who steal quickly from you. It's not so much the fifth ray, but maybe it has a fifth ray mind. Mercury could be involved. And there is, and of course, Vulcan. We cannot leave Vulcan out of the picture. It's so much associated with the dense material level. It's a planet of will, but on its outer level, it seems much connected with matter, and with working in matter, and having to know and understand matter in order to work with it. Vulcan is interesting in that its outer aspects, even including its soul ray, seem all along the 1, 3, 5, 7 line when we study what it represents. But when we come to its monadic nature, we find a 4, I believe, as the artistic worker within the hard substances, within metals and stone and so forth, and also maybe ultimately a 2 at the root of it all as the highest monadic ray. This is my impression, because Vulcan is definitely associated with the heart of the sun, and DK gives that as Vulcan, the heart of the sun. So in its highest reaches, it has the soft line rays, and from the soul down, it seems to have so much of the hard line rays, and maybe that's the reason for the imbalance, and maybe that's why these souls have not rounded themselves out. So these may be seen in the purely, not saying that all people who are scientific are this way, no. In the purely intellectual, scientific type. And this, now the implication there is amazing, because it shows us how much of mind, per se, can be expected from the opening third petal. How much can be expected, because the third petal is just opening, and yet they are intellectual. They are still ignorant of the higher of the pairs of opposites, of course. They have not learned about that, and so many necessary types of social interaction. Their affect is very low. It's not a question of controlling the astral body, it's a question of having sufficient responses to control. So, in my view, the personality of Vulcan has some fifth ray in it. It's connected with the concrete aspects demonstrating on our lowest plane. And Mercury has enough of that intellectualism. And when we actually look at the relationship between Vulcan and Mercury, DK says something about how Vulcan is hidden behind that planet. Let's see if I can find that in esoteric astrology. Vulcan, hidden planet. Okay, let's see what we have here. I don't see hidden planets, etc. And what's the next one? Okay, here it is. Hence the recent discovery of Pluto and the sensed power of Vulcan, veiled by the potency of Mercury and hidden behind the planet. Hidden behind, presumably, that planet. So there is definitely a connection here, and I'm much more likely to think that the origin of this type, it just says there's one emanating planet. It doesn't say two, but, one or the other. Opening, etc., middle petal, shut. They're emanating planet. There's only one. And I'm of the impression that this group has created so much of the machinery of war and forged and work in forging in metals and creating destructive mechanisms made out of the mineral kingdom, mineral substance. And only with the scientific mind could they really do that. So my present take on this, which is still to be confirmed, there is a relationship between Mercury and Vulcan, but I'm choosing Vulcan as the more likely source. Hence the discovery of Pluto and the sense power of Vulcan veiled by the potency of Mercury. It doesn't say veiled by Mercury per se, but veiled by the potency of Mercury. And there is something in Vulcan which relates to the mercurial mode, to the mental mode of dealing with matter. Mercury is likely to work with the mind on higher levels. Vulcan will work with the mind in matter. That is my understanding. So I'm going to say a probable Vulcan working with the mind in matter. And it's interesting, the first petal is unfolding. The first petal has a lot to do with will, because, we're going forth into matter here at the very beginning, and we're dealing with the dense concrete reality. There's a lot of Vulcan in it, the lower type of Vulcan, and then comes the Mercurian petal. Now, see, that's so interesting if you think about it. The first petal has a lot to do with Vulcan. It is opening. The third petal has a lot to do with Mercury, and you'll see how I do this when I lay out the signs Capricorn, Taurus, and Virgo as co-rulers, pretty powerful co-rulers of the first three petals. Of course, Vulcan is involved really in all of them. But Vulcan is first ray, and therefore should be associated with the first petal and first impact of man within the dense world. But then by the time we get to the third petal, the mind must definitely be used, and it shows us here that the intellect must come from somewhere. And it shows us, in a way, what can be attained through that third petal, which is a petal of sacrifice of the knowledge tier, but also a petal of mentality. They are responsible for much of the advanced application, of mechanical science to the needs of men. You see, there's some things here which suggest Mars. I mean, we could say, could Mars be involved? Because Mars is mechanical, Mars applies, but there's so much of Mars which is passionate. So I tend to think that Mars is not the likely source of this group. Because the desire nature, Mars is keenly connected with the desire nature. So I tend to think, no, that is not so likely. And I do see many upon our planet at this time who I think are Martian monads, and they are known by their fanaticism, their militant fanaticism. And I think we see this especially in our modern day. So when I think of the application of mechanical science to the needs of men, I think of Vulcan and Mercury particularly. I cannot exclude all of what Mars does. Mars does bring the interest in mechanics, the concrete mind is involved and so forth, but that the second petal should be completely shut upon Martians is, to me, doubtful. So they are responsible for much of the advanced application of mechanical science to the needs of men. And for the introduction of certain types of machinery. This is so Vulcanian. They work largely in connection with the energy of the mineral kingdom, again, Vulcanian. with its powerful first ray. We know how Vulcan loves to work with the Agni Chaitans, the Vulcanians, and how they are invested in the earth. You wonder, whether there are primary lotuses who have developed further and who have actually unfolded that middle petal. But the majority seems to be working on it. So when we think of the metals and the stone and all the hardest things of life and how man can master them, we think of Vulcan. So let's call it the mastery of hard substances, dense, hard substances, dense substances. Okay. So, they had to feature prominently in the Shambhala induced Industrial Revolution. Prominently in the Shambhala induced industrial. Now, the Atlanteans had machinery, of course, but we are told that this group came in the fifth root race, in the fourth and fifth subrace. That's not Atlantis. So they were quiescent in Atlantean times. They were not there. They had not come in. They were not incarnating, at least. When they came into our planet, that's hard to know. I mean, we'd have to know a lot more planetary lore than we do know. So they worked largely in connection with the energy of the mineral kingdom. That's precisely what Vulcan does, with the very lowest kingdom, which is not only the seventh, but in a way the first kingdom. So we will say Vulcan. First kingdom of nature and the first ray planet, connected with pressure and density. Excuse me. By this it must be inferred that the solar lords who embody this type are linked with a group of lunar lords who respond magnetically to the devas of the mineral kingdom. This is an interesting statement. So what we have here is the idea that solar angels are associated with this type. Now, whether solar angels came with them from their planet of origin, or when they came in at a certain point in the fourth and fifth subrace of the fifth root race, that solar angels, as it were, attached themselves to this type of monad. It's obvious that the causal body existed before. But was it a causal body with a solar angel substanding the petals, or was it a causal body created in some other way? In any case, there are now solar lords associated with this type of entity. And let me just get that correct. So there are they are linked with a group of lunar lords. The lunar lords who comprise the outer vehicles of this type of monad are oriented towards the devas of the mineral kingdom, and one might wonder about their ray. Maybe some of the peculiar ray types are found here. One might wonder about the rays of the lower vehicles of this type of monad or ego. It seems that individualization did occur in a different place. I mean, it doesn't. I don't know. it doesn't seem that individualization would have occurred in Lemuria, because they came in the fourth and fifth sub-races of the fifth root race, and they're connected with the fifth race. So we can offer the hypothesis that individualization occurred on their planet of origin, and that they were somehow transferred into our planetary scheme, chain, with the destination of taking incarnation or coming in on our globe. Their work for the race has at present a deleterious effect, meaning that they cause division and the instruments of war. Division and the instruments of war. But when the second petal is opened, because let us remember that the second petal has much of beauty and love associated with it, it's not just a petal of primitivity like the first petal is, then the wonders then to be achieved by them in loving service, originating here from the second petal qualities, along their own particular line, which is what can we call mechanistic, and instrumentation, will be one of the factors which will regenerate the fourth kingdom, and this is coming before long. The regeneration of the fourth kingdom, even in the Aquarian age, even in the age of Aquarius, some of this will occur, and some leisure through the support of instrumentation and mechanism will emerge. Maybe, I don't know, maybe even more in the age of Capricorn, which is more closely associated with Vulcan. So we really understand that the second petal is very important, and that it is a petal of love, even though it's love within form. It has a lot of Venus connected with it, and apparently a fair amount of Jupiter as well. Unfoldments do occur there, and motivations towards love in form do occur. Loving service is possible with three petals, so it seems. Yes. They will achieve emancipation in the fifth round. Well, okay, we have a long way to go still in the fourth round. What is emancipation? It depends on, of course, what he means, but we could say, could this be the fourth initiation? 4/5 of them passing on to the path, and 1/5 set back for another cycle. It's as if the Judgment Day is important. So in the beginning of the Judgment Day, though this is occurring in the fifth round of our chain, at least a Judgment Day is, and in the fifth round of our chain, there will be a separation of the sheep from the goats. Now, it's my impression that many Martian monads will not continue on our planet. All of those, the 3/5 that do continue on our planet, will be on the path, whether it's just the probationary path or whether it's a higher stage of the path. So it's as if at the Judgment Day, is my impression here, they will at least be on the path, and during the fifth round, following the Judgment Day, they will achieve emancipation, or the fourth initiation, following the Judgment Day. So that is another reason that I think they are not from Mars. The underdevelopment or overdevelopment of the concrete mind is what will send the sheep at the Judgment Day into another locale within our planetary scheme, and eventually I think to another planet, which will be Mars. When we think about Aries, the sign of the sheep, Mars is the ruler of Aries. It makes sense to me that those who will be set aside of the 2/5 will be Martian monads who in this cycle did not manage to round themselves out, did not manage to find themselves on the path. But in this 5th round, and I think, at that important juncture we call the Judgment Day, this group will set foot upon the path. That's a long time if you think about it. It kind of shows us how much can be accomplished of love and service even before the love petals are really fully opened and one has achieved, one is on the path. One is on the path, I think, when the 5th petal is almost open. And we're not talking about that. We're not talking about them achieving that now. We're talking about that being achieved at the 5th, in the 5th round, at a decisive point. And all of this is planned, and they say 4/5 will pass on to the path, presumably on our Earth, where those who are treading the path can be retained. It has to do, I think, with generally when they came into incarnation. Because if there is sufficient time to work things out, then progress is made. And if there's insufficient time, then yet another cycle is required. So the planet, this seems to be one of the first instances in which a lotus has been formed on another planet and is transferred to our planetary scheme and chain and globe. We could not say that of these lotuses, not so confidently, these lotuses from Venus and from Jupiter. They can be monadically from Venus and Jupiter and still be part of our true Earth humanity. But these lotuses, I think, from Vulcan are not individualizing on our planet and are not part of our true Earth humanity. As a matter of fact, the word rounding out is interesting. As a monad, these types will not need rounding out. But if there was some 1st and 5th petal unfoldment on their planet of origin, and no 2nd petal unfoldment, then they would need rounding out. We can't talk about the monad and say, at least with what we know, that it has to be rounded out. Now, we can't really do that. But we can talk about an egoic lotus which needs rounding out. And I think so many of the kinds of incarnations that we might be taking, where we are directed for incarnation in the normal incarnational process, has to do with rounding out. When DK talks about how the ego sounds its note, and the fullness of the chord produced or the note produced is noted, and the next incarnation is chosen accordingly. That's all part of the supplemental rounding out process. So the hints are here that if they're sent to Earth for rounding out, some development must have preceded, and that development means that individualization took place on their planet of origin. Many of these people, you know, they are not particularly quick in their movements. They're working in density, and they're probably somehow related to the gnomes and other forms of Devic life who work within the earth. They're certainly related to the Agni Chaitans and to that lowest form of electric fire by friction. So interesting, isn't it? Trying to study man, the human race, the different kinds of beings there are, and the different stages of development which they demonstrate, and learning of their origins and the times of their unfoldment and the predicted times of their fulfillment. We're going to have an interesting prediction coming up right here in the next group. Now we move on to a group which I think is basically Earth humanity. It's not coming from Vulcan as influenced by Mercury. It is coming from our own planet, and probably individualization in the early days of Middle Lemuria and not in Atlantis. These are lotuses of passion or desire. And they are so called because their fundamental nature is embodied love in some one or other form. Embodied love, there's a hint about Taurus here, Taurus the second sign and the second petal. The second petal is still involved strongly. We don't know how many monads of love we actually have on our planet. That figure of 20 billion monads of intelligence, 35 billion monads of love, and 5 billion monads of will is shown to pertain to the solar system. In some planets, of course, Devic monads preponderate. We don't know which. There are some 200 billion monads if you combine the human monads and the Devic monads in our solar system. How can they be apportioned on the various planets when, interestingly, 1/7 of the beings are incarnated and 6/7 remain out of incarnation? It's almost as if the demands coming from that 1/7 and 6/7 are so strenuous that there's not enough monads in our solar system to fulfill that. But okay, there are methods of apportioning of which we know nothing. We don't necessarily have to assume, is the 6/7 law always operative? If there are 6 billion incarnated human beings on our planet, are 6/7 of the human monads on our planet out of incarnation? Or has that proportion been temporarily disrupted for a particular planetary purpose? It wouldn't seem right to me, or proportional to me, knowing what I know or don't know, that 42 billion human monads are associated with our planet, leaving only 18 billion to be distributed on all the rest of the planets in the solar system. So obviously some figures are missing, or some ways of thinking about the 6/7 and 1/7 figure are missing. So they are embodied love in some form or another. Love is predominant, and in the previous group, it basically said that love, they're swayed by love more than animal instinct, but obviously animal instinct is still a pretty strong driving force. So, the bulk of the monads of love, however many there are on our planet, however many there are on our planet, are among this large group. And remember, with human group number 5, the bulk of humanity, the nice, well-to-do people, and so forth. Let's just look at that. Stages here. These are intelligent human beings, predominantly emotional. They constitute the bulk of modern humanity at this time, and they are the average citizens of the world, good, well-intentioned, and capable of intense emotional activity. Love in form is there. So human group number 5, and this group of lotuses of passion or desire can pretty well describe what modern man is. They are divided into, so it's the bulk of the well-to-do, kindly people of the world. This is virtually identical with what he said here, the nice, good people. The word kind and the word nice is there. They have some intelligence. They have intelligent human beings. What will it say here about intelligence? Let's see. Looking down here. Or maybe we'll just have to get into that. This is going to be a long one. This is going to be a long discussion. This one. Okay. And I'm giving you a longer program here. The process of dividing programs up into smaller sections is time consuming, and one can almost do an entire program in the time that it takes to divide programs into 1-hour segments. So time being of the essence, I'm taking the risk. Anyway, kind, nice, well-to-do, the sheep of the human family, they have intelligence, the kindly, well-to-do, maybe even a little beyond level 5 of the human groups, some of these suggesting an interim group between human group 5 and human group 6, or soul group. Sometimes I call them human groups, sometimes soul groups. They are the groups of human souls. It's amazing how the numbers are involved here, isn't it? They are all these classifications are carefully numbered. It's all part of the plan. It's all part of the structure of the purpose and the enactment of the plan. The plan enacts the purpose, and the purpose is a pattern which is structured. It's a pattern in the world of being, probably on the monadic plane, or maybe on the logoic plane. We can call the logoic plane a plane of being, definitely. They are divided into 5 groups. This is so interesting, of whom 3 individualized upon our planet. Now this almost tells us for sure that the Brahmic Lotuses and the Lotuses of Brahman individualized upon our planet, because these are more advanced. They've had a longer time to develop. So they were probably individualized in early middle Lemuria. Middle Lemuria is when the individualization actually began, and they're probably in the earlier part of that. This tells us that Brahmic lotuses and lotuses, lotuses of Brahman. I never did that. Lotuses of Brahman were individualized on Earth. And two were the very latest to individualize upon the moon chain. This is really interesting. So we think, is moon chain humanity all that intelligent necessarily? There's some wonderful suggestions concerning time in the study of these lotuses of passion and desire. So the very latest group, the last group, we might say, to individualize as men on the moon chain are among this group. This is a fairly advanced group. You think about the Atlantean lotuses, the ones who individualized there, and there was a long period in Atlantis when that individualization could have occurred. They are the most primitive, definitely the most primitive. And what is interesting is how many first-ray monads may be found among them. So the implication is here that among the most primitive of human beings existing on our planet now, there are large numbers of first-ray monads relatively. Okay, so 2/5, here we have the 3/5, 2/5. This is so interesting because with the primary lotuses we have the 4/5, 1/5. And of the Judgment Day we have the 3/5, 2/5 again. So moon chain, this is what is important. That moon chain humanity is found among the lotuses of passion and desire. And I'm going to, since I'm going to have to talk about these, we'll call them the low-pads. And we'll call them lotuses of passion and desire. And maybe I'll put quotation marks around it. We'll see whether that is helpful. Okay, let's try that. Lotuses of passion and desire. Sometimes it's so small it's hard to see. The low-pads, okay. Moon chain humanity is found among the lotuses of passion and desire, but moon chain humanity is not found among those that are just emerging from the bud and are not strictly speaking in bud. It's not found among Brahmic lotuses, and it's not found among lotuses of Brahman, is my guess. This is the first time it's mentioned. And you need enough time to develop this stage. So only early individualizers on Earth, that is, from the earliest times on Earth that individualization occurred, and those even from a previous chain who had already been individualized, could have had the time to develop to this point. They have two petals unfolded, and the third is for them at this time the object of their attention. They're trying to cultivate the mind per se, and they are called, let's see, well, they have to be intelligent. They are the bulk of the monads of love, and if this group over here is called intelligent human beings, and we suspect that the lotuses of passion and desire might be even more in advance than the average human group number 5, then they have to be intelligent. So there is, let's say that intelligence is under cultivation. The object of their attention. So the modern, good, nice person, some in number 5 were easily regimented, but maybe as you begin to work through this group, you're not so easily regimented anymore. They're easily conditioned, herded into certain conditions and so forth. That's what it says of human group number 5. But of this group, we are not told that they are so easily regimented. So perhaps this group represents a later part of human group number 5, but not quite human group number 6, which are the creative thinkers. So the creative thinkers have in fact unfolded to a great extent, and maybe completely, petal number 3, and this group has not. Now, many will succeed in unfolding the third petal before the 7th root race of this round. Think how slow this is, because root races last millions of years. The 6th root race is scheduled to last 10 million years. And there'll probably be some overlap of the 5th root race along with it. The Atlantean root race, if we can consider that it ended, although the Atlanteans did not end, but that it ended 1 million years ago when the Aryan root race really emerged. That was a 11 million year period, because he talks about early Atlantean times as 12 million years ago. So let's say 11 million years, 10, 11 million years, maybe more. The 6th root race, 10 million years. The Lemurian root race, 21 million years ago, until maybe 4 million years ago. I read somewhere, maybe it's in Philip's book, but there was a big destruction around 4 million years ago, which was bringing the majority of the Lemurian root race to an end, a kind of volcanic action. I may not have the specifics correct, but I think that we're talking about, well, maybe 17, 16 million years for the duration. So think of how far ahead is the end of the 6th root race 10 million years from now, and then even though there might be some root race acceleration towards the end, I don't know if there really is, the 7th root race may succeed in unfolding it before the 7th root race in this round. So, okay, so basically it's at the end of the 6th root race. And the 6th root race will last 10 million years and will begin soon. Already, the 6th root race is in a sense beginning even as we are entering the 6th sub-race of the 5th root race. That's how Philip conceives it, and basically when the sub-race of the previous race is emerging, then so is the beginning of the next root race, which shares the same number as that sub-race. So the 5th root race began to emerge, he conceives, at 4.5, and the 6th root race will begin to emerge at 5.6, and we're just about there. As a matter of fact, many human beings are now examples of the 5.6, some of the newer types of individuals which Theosophy says have been isolated in certain colonies, maybe such as Australia, New Zealand, parts of America, maybe the West Coast. The Californian. Is the Californian a special breed? And, to an extent, throughout Europe, in various places, we see that. Those who have responded to the new wave of consciousness, which came from the East, perhaps at the time that the Christ assumed the vestures of the Buddha, which we judge to be 1966. So anyway, many will succeed in unfolding it before the seventh root race of this round. Within 10 million years, that's still a long time. But the bulk of them will unfold it in the second root race of the next round. And that's millions and millions of years ahead, which is the fifth round. So if every round lasts generically some 300 million years, with a kind of parallel pralaya occurring, well, it's going to be a long time before these lotuses of passion and desire really not just achieve emancipation, but achieve the unfoldment of the third petal. So then it just occurs to me, yes, I was going to say, can they be among the goats at the judgment day? And yes, they can, because we're talking about the second root race of the next round. But I want to tell you, there's a problem here because we've left something out. What globe are we talking about? The second root race of the next round on the fourth globe? Maybe that's what we mean. So let's put that in. So on the fourth globe, because this is our globe we're talking about, and we're talking about the Earth appearing here on Earth and not on the subtler globes of our chain. So maybe when it says second root race of the next round on our globe, and the judgment day will be more like the fifth root race on our globe in the fifth round. So maybe judgment day perhaps more like the fifth root race of the fifth round. Yes, okay, so they will have had time to make it, and will probably be in the earliest stages of the path at that time, which is not just 10 million years ahead. See, what I expect here, many will succeed on unfolding it before the seventh root race of this round. So I expect that 2/5 will have unfolded it by the end of the sixth root race. And maybe they will take the second root race to seventh root race of this round to move on to the path. And who are they? The moon chain egos, who are in this group of lotuses of passion and desire. So I expect that the moon chain group, the 2/5 coming in from the moon chain that are part of these lotuses of passion and desire, will be more advanced than the others that individualized in middle Lemurian days on our planet. And so they will be the ones who are in a position to unfold the third petal completely, be very intelligent, before the beginning of the seventh root race. And maybe in the seventh root race they will find themselves on the path, and maybe at the judgment day at a further point on the path. We don't know at what points in the fifth round those who have still more development to undertake will be brought in. We just have to think of the parallel that moon chain humanity, as low as they were brought in at the third subphase of the fourth root race. They waited a long time. They waited 3.5 rounds, really, to come back in for their development. So these lotuses of passion and desire, the 3/5, who will only open the third petal by the second root race of the 5th round, will have to wait through some of the, well, they certainly have to wait through the 7th root race. We don't know whether they'll be part of the 7th root race of our round, but they will be waiting through the 1st root race of the next round. So it's not that one can necessarily continuously and always keep progressing forward. One has to progress according to the cycles available. And DK has a lot to hint at anyway in terms of soul cycles, of different types of soul rays. When these types on this ray, on these various rays, can actually appear in incarnation. Sometimes they're not allowed to appear in incarnation because their soul ray cycle has not occurred, or maybe a different kind of soul cycle which keeps them out of incarnation for a long period of time. So it's not necessarily a continuous story of incarnation on our planet, go to the subtle worlds, come back, come back. You may be reserved in the subtle worlds for quite a while until the cycle appropriate to you again is available. So I hope I've explained that, that the nice average people, and this is astonishing, who are working on the third petal and developing some intelligence, will not necessarily be available. They will not necessarily achieve the path in our round. Some may. Will not even achieve the path. Maybe they will certainly achieve the opening of the third petal. You're not really treading the path until there's quite a bit of activity going on in the 5th petal. Okay. So the bulk of them will unfold it in the 2nd root race to the next round and will stand ready before the close of the round, which is the 5th round, before the close of that round, and the judgment day is before the close of the round, to pass onto the probationary path, having unfolded one tier of petals and organized the second. So the path apparently can occur when there is sufficient organization in the 5th petal. Organize the second tier. Whether they're completely organized, I don't know. What organization really means, I don't know. There have to be a certain patterning of energies there, and a building in of energies, but the real expression of those energies is what we mean by unfoldment. So minimally, you have to be on the probationary path when the judgment day occurs in order to stay with the earth. Otherwise, you will be taken to a subtle location first, probably another chain or globe in our planetary scheme, and thence, as I have given my reasons, to Mars. So they will not be on the probationary path. The nice, good people will not be responding to what we have to say about spiritual development, if this is correct, and unless some unusual, untoward acceleration has occurred, they will not be in a position to respond to occultism. The great bulk of humanity will not be in a position to respond to occultism, at least in a personal sense, until the next round. So that when Madame Blavatsky says that occultism must win the day before the end of the 21st century, what does she mean? Does she mean in the minds of the true thinkers who are beyond this stage of the lotuses of passion and desire. So, and this is also an interesting definition. When can you be on the probationary path? And I'd just like to say that you can be on the path of probation when you have unfolded one tier and organized the second. And I imagine that the degree of organization is greater in the fourth than in the fifth, and greater in the fifth than in the sixth. I imagine there's always organization moving on ahead. So here I had said that maybe the moonchain 2/5 will unfold the third petal in this round. That is what I gathered to be the case, and the others later. All of these lotuses of the first circle, interesting, because there are lotuses of the second circle, but are they actually named? Well, let's see how we do this. All of these lotuses of the first circle, and we've named 5 so far, the not strictly buds, the Brahmic lotuses, the lotuses of Brahman, the primary lotuses, and the lotuses of passion and desire. So those are 5. The not strictly buds have to also to be considered because perhaps they're not yet Brahmic lotuses. Are divided into groups, but interplay goes on between them, just the way we meet all kinds of different people and we have interaction with them and influence them. I mean, I suppose the more intelligent lotuses are now influencing very strongly the lotuses of passion and desire, and even those in the Atlantean group who can begin to use the mind. May we assume that there is also a category called lotuses of the second circle? Now, lotuses of the second circle, what would they be? Lotuses, well, you see, when you're working in the 7th petal, and you still have a focus in the 5th, which completely unfolds at the first initiation. When you're working in the 8th petal, there is still work going on in the 6th, and it completely unfolds at the 2nd initiation. Are those who are being initiated and working in the sacrifice tier called lotuses of the 3rd circle? Are those who are working in the 2nd circle called lotuses of the 2nd circle? Because the 2nd circle doesn't completely unfold until there are and work is going on and initiation is occurring in the 3rd circle, the circle of sacrifice. So all of these that we have thus far discussed are still working in the 1st circle. And that complete unfoldment of the 1st circle and the organizing of the 2nd circle, which means the probationary path, has not yet occurred for them. They are not on the probationary path. So I'm assuming here that when you work in a circle, you are called a lotus of that circle. Unfoldment may come of the first circle of petals, but then you're already working in the 2nd circle. So technically then you're a lotus of the 2nd circle. Unfoldment may come of the complete 2nd circle, but when it does, you're already working in the 3rd circle. And are there lotuses of the 4th circle? You know, people between the 3rd and 4th initiation working in the synthesis petals with the 3rd circle already unfolded. I mean, lotuses of the 4th circle, is that what I said? Lotuses of the 4th circle? I don't know, but we could continue the analogy. So they are all divided into groups, but interplay does go on between them, and energy in any center produces reflex energy in another, so there's a great deal of interactivity. It must be remembered that in closing the door in Atlantean times to the animal kingdom, and the consequent temporary cessation of the forming of any more bud lotuses, and, you know, as I say, middle Atlantis was when the door was closed, the effect was dual. in directions other than the human or the animal. Interesting. In directions other than the human or the animal. Did it have effects on higher kingdoms and lower kingdoms? It seems to be suggesting that this is the case. It was the result of the internal decision on the part of the planetary logos to turn his attention away from the act of creation on the systemic mental plane to the work of progressive evolution, and this will mean that initiation, wrong place, that initiation is in the work of progressive evolution. And notice that when the planetary logos turns his attention to something, something happens. This vitalization of the attention, I've sometimes thought that his many, many types of incarnations on chains and globes and through rounds and all of that is simply a question of his focused presence through attention. That incarnation is the focused presence of the planetary logos. I have thought that incarnation is the focused presence of the planetary logos. So this caused a cessation of a certain type of activity in relation to the animal kingdom, producing a quiescence in certain of his centers, I suppose, related to the animal kingdom. You know, the animal kingdom is a center in the planetary logos. So is the human kingdom. Which center it is, it's said to be anything from the ajna center to the throat center to even the solar plexus center, never the heart center, interestingly enough. Not yet. So through the, it's just like the master's work. If they don't want something to thrive because it's not leading in the right direction, and it has been something they have supported before, they turn the feeding power of their attention away from it, and then it naturally goes into a state of attrition, something we might all well think about when we think about what we're trying to offer on behalf of the hierarchy. So this caused the cessation of certain types of activity, producing a quiescence in certain of his centers and an increased activity in others. Is it the new group of worlds servers? Well, they're already initiates, of probationary initiates. Well, humanity as an ajna center, humanity as a throat center, let's just say throat center and ajna center, which humanity may be. It also had an effect upon the solar angels, because after all, they had been, many of them, associating themselves and planting the spark of mind into animal man. Whatever, in these Atlantean days, what forms of life were being individualized? Presumably there were still these great ape-like creatures that were the right type of vehicle in which or through which individualization could occur. So it not only had to do with human activity and animal activity, but it affected the solar angels. Are they a kingdom? They're not exactly a kingdom, are they? But they are a hierarchy, a creative hierarchy, the fifth. And consequently, upon the heart of the solar system from whence they are drawn. So the reflex activity of the planetary logos turning his attention away from individualization affected the heart center of the solar logos. And what do we mean by that? The heart of the solar system. Well, it may be that monads are found upon the second systemic plane. And since the heart center is found on the second ether of the systemic ethers, perhaps the monads were affected too. This is my inference. But on the other hand, when it says the heart of the solar system, we hear that the solar angels come from the heart of the sun. Now, the heart of the sun seems to be the soul of the sun. So, are the solar angels drawn from the heart center of the solar system, or are they drawn from the heart of the sun, which would be found on the cosmic mental plane, or is there a link between the two? There's some mystery veiled there about the temporary origin of the solar angels. The heart of the solar system seems to be the monadic plane, or at least that's the locale. The heart of the sun seems to be the cosmic mental plane, and a great solar angel there exists. Excuse me. Yeah, a great solar angel there exists, and our solar angels are, I would say, essentially a part of that greater solar angel. So our solar angels have a certain heart of the sun origin. But we have to be careful about this term, which might be a blind. You know, the heart of the solar system may not be the same at all as the heart of the sun. But anyway, they return to the heart of the sun. Well, presumably they might return to this solar to a level of the solar system, but they might also return in some sense to the cosmic mental plane. So anyway, the heart of the solar system, which is that's a very I almost feel like heart of the solar system may be different from the heart of the sun, indeed. You know, as you go through these books, things that you may have ignored long ago suddenly become more obvious, more interesting. So I see that I have some research to undertake about the different meanings of the heart of the solar system, the heart of the subjective sun, the heart of the sun. These are not necessarily all equivalent terms and may indicate different origins and destinations for different beings. So, the hints come to you as you read, and for further illumination, they have to be followed up. As I'm doing this for you and for me and for whomever, it's a work in progress. I'm not pretending to know everything I'm talking about here. I'm working it out as I go along, and I'm sharing with you the present content of my thought and the associations which come to me, some of which may be correct and illuminative, and others of which may lead off on false trails. But it's the best I can do for the moment. So here we have the heart of the solar system, and now he uses these same words, or at least associated words in the same context. Floods of energy, or streams of force, from the heart of the sun, the subjective sun. Now, does that involve the cosmic astral plane, you see? That's the amazing thing. What I'm going to say, what I'm going to do is, well, I can't really do that. But I think I should. I should continue that, because if I don't, heart of the sun of the solar system, right, okay, I have to put these in here, and that will make a clearer reference to ponder on. Ponder on this, you know, it's what the second ray does. We ponder upon something until the light breaks forth. So floods of energy or streams of force from the heart of the sun, the subjective sun, were arrested and directed elsewhere. What could we say? Possibly to other planets, would we say? To other planets, question mark? While the Petri is already active. That is the solar angels, because it's a parallel word, Petri and solar angel, solar Petri, solar angel, already active, began to center their attention upon the work begun, and temporarily new beginnings were out of order. So the monads, who usually get involved in that kind of thing, were signaled no more individualization. The Petries, who would have undertaken either the fanning of the spark or the investment of themselves as the spark of mind in animal man, were told no more. It must not be forgotten here that the work of the solar Petries, from their point of view, is not primarily the evolution of man, but is the process of their own development. The fifth feeds upon the fourth, we are told in the sixth rule for group initiation. But is the process of their own development within the plan of the solar logos, and, you know, putting things in perspective, for this reason, that they have much to gain through the process of individualization and supervision. They are not yet avatars, because the avatar descends, well, at least in the purest sense, with no possible advantage to itself. The evolution of the human race is for them but a method of achievement, and you kind of wonder whether we human beings, in promoting the evolution of the lower kingdoms, are also pursuing for us a method which will enhance our own evolution. Perhaps it is so. Now, this is one of those great statements, and one that reminds every meditator, or should remind every meditator, who he or she is dealing with when doing occult meditation. Perfected men are in the councils of the planetary logos of their particular ray. And let's just talk about our planetary logos, and the council at Shambhala, and the fact that Sanat Kumara is really an emanation of our planetary logos, and that initiates, some initiates of the fifth degree can enter that council, but definitely initiates of the sixth degree, as Chohans, can enter that council, the planetary council. The solar Petries are in the council of the solar logos. Well, you know, that little statement could escape us, but when you think of it, it means that when we meditate and we attempt to contact our solar angel by whatever means, and we begin to receive the streams of energy coming through the solar angel and its many diversified emanations in the causal body, we are dealing with a being who is a member of the council of the solar logos beyond even our Chohans. So when people say, oh, I want to contact my master, I want to contact this initiate, I want to channel, blah, blah, blah. And here is this being who's from the council of the sun, of the solar logos, and we have the opportunity in meditation to contact it through the angel of the presence, it seems all out of proportion, doesn't it? It just seems that we should stick to our meditation and forget about who we're channeling here or channeling there. Best to ultimately to channel our own monad, and along the way to bring through that aspect of the solar Petri which we would call the angel of the presence, and which is the presence within our ego, higher ego. So this, I just decided, friends, I hope you'll forgive me, it seems important to continue along a certain line and not to be interrupting myself all the time and lose my train of thought, etc., even though it makes for a smaller program. So all I could say is that you could see what, when you begin to listen to this and look at it, you'd see how far you get, and then when you go back to it, you just put the cursor at that point and continue. It will save me a lot of time, and it may make for a higher quality presentation, especially in some of these sections which are long enough to require sustained attention. So what do we have? We have what might be called lotuses of the, well, how did he do it? All of these lotuses of the, did he call them lotuses of the first circle? Okay, now I see how he did it. So in the list that we have so far been given, we have lotuses of the third circle. They become as they do become because the application of the rod of initiation has interacted with them. I mean, one does not know what it is that the Christ or Sanat Kumara is actually touching within the chamber of initiation, which is in a sense the causal body. We don't know whether there is a direct application of the rod or whether the energy flows from the rod. Maybe that's not important for us at this moment to know. But these are lotuses of the third circle. Because work is being done in the third circle when this type of lotus is created. Even though we might have a radiant lotus from the time the fifth petal is unfolded, work within the seventh petal is occurring. We might have a lotus of perfume when the sixth petal is unfolded, and therefore the complete second tier is unfolded, but work within the third tier or third circle is occurring. So now what we would have to do, these are lotuses of, from this definition, these are lotuses of the third circle. The lotuses of revelation, third degree, perfume, second degree, radiant lotuses, first degree. Though the radiance, of course, has got to continue and the perfume has to continue, and even a little bit of revelation has to have been there even in the earlier stages. But now let's start building up from below. And what would we find? Lotuses wherein the flower is on the point of opening. Well, do we think that when we hear the word flower, is the flower more than petal? Is the is the flower more than a petal? So if it is the flower, could it be the outer flower? Because the second aspect of the flower is already taken care of with the lotuses of perfume. We would say that the second tier is completely open here. So obviously, if we're talking about several petals and the look of a flower, we could be, he didn't say lotuses wherein the petal is on the point of opening, lotuses wherein the flower, and if you combine several petals, you get the flower effect. Several petals combined give you the flower effect. Okay. So it would seem that the earlier stages have to be found here. And I'm just going to make bullets, not try to, I'm not going to try to somehow number them because it's too confusing. But you'll see how we can lay these out. Okay, so this group, right above, let's see, how do I do this? Right above the lotuses of closed and sealed condition, which we could call, no we can't. We can call the first group above this bud, how about spelling? Bud-related lotuses, for whom or for which the first petal, finite perceivable, and that's going to do, first petal is open but not fully open. Okay. Now, of course, I'm kind of doing this in reverse order, so we'll see what the effect might be. Okay, I'll have to hit the good old bullet again and see what happens. Aha. All right. That's what happens when you hit the bullet. And I'm going to see if I can possibly hit the bullet a few times. Whoop. And let's just see how that goes. Yeah, I'm managing. All right. This will give me room to interpolate a few more. All right. See, the lotuses wherein the flower is on the point of opening, we might consider these to be lotuses of the second circle, even though the flower is of the first circle. We might say, perhaps, these are lotuses, maybe put it in caps, lotuses of the second circle, even though it is the first circle which is opening entirely. Then, down here, let's call the next group Brahmic Lotuses, because they have one petal fully unfolded. Brahmic Lotuses. They're very Lemurian, and they're very instinctual. Then the next group we're going to call Lotuses of Brahman. And the love energy is being expressed, the second petal. So this is called Lotus of Brahman, first petal completely unfolded. Completely unfolded. Lotuses of Brahman, second petal is showing signs of opening. They have more of the love quality. Whoop, that won't do. Okay. I'll just leave it like that. It's not elegant in terms of format. Then we have, where should we put them? What to put first. In a way, we have here lotuses of passion and desire. And we can say that two petals are opening, and the third petal is the object of their attention. So there must be organization is going on. And when we look at these, all of these early ones are simply earth humanity. Individualized in whatever manner of individualization on our Earth globe. But here, 2/5 individualized, on moon chain, and 3/5 on the Earth chain. EC. That ought to do it. Then I think it's hard to know what to do with these primary lotuses, but they are more advanced than the lotuses of Brahman and less advanced in other ways than the lotuses of passion and desire. But I'll put them here. Primary lotuses from Vulcan, Mercury, more likely Vulcan, and petal 1 and petal 3 opening. Then we go to the lotuses wherein the flower is on the point of opening. I assume that means that all 3 petals and a certain type of initiation can be taken, all 3 petals of the first circle. I do believe there should be other names for petals of the second circle. I think we have not really been given that. Maybe we have to somehow work that out. We've been given a lot of petals of the first circle, and with the terms radiant lotuses, lotus with perfume, lotus of revelation, we've been given petals of the third circle. But petals of the second circle, you know, what is a petal to be called when the 4th petal is completely unfolded? With the 5th petal, that's the one that seems to be missing. It's kind of a pivot. The 4th petal in process, okay, what should it be called? Completely unfolded, what should it be called? The 5th petal in process, what should it be called? 5th petal unfolded, radiant lotuses. 6th petal in process, what should it be called? 5th petal fully unfolded, 6th petal fully unfolded, lotuses with perfume. Are there the lotuses of revelation? Is there anything between the lotuses with perfume and revelation? Because work in the 9th petal will produce the lotus of revelation when that revelation, when the 9th petal is completely unfolded. So it's a little bit raggle-taggle, okay, I admit that, but one gets an idea by looking at the various names, the various processes, how it is that the unfoldment of the egoic lotus occurs, and to a degree the stages of human evolution which it represents. I did look at some of the pictures you can on the internet of the Ainus and the Vedas of Ceylon and the Bushmen and of course the Aboriginals who are more commonly seen, and one can see here the true earth humanity which has not been quickened by the solar angel. That, of course, highly advanced souls can incarnate in these groups, and they have with them the full egoic lotus and the attention of the solar angel and so forth, but I'm just speaking of the general classifications. And, you know, these days you could be accused of racism when you talk in these terms. But this is the occult teaching, and we have all been through groups of this kind. It's just a progression. What's missing from the modern assessment is the dimension of time required for the unfoldment of form, and more importantly, the unfoldment of consciousness. So when the reincarnational explanation is introduced, any kind of accusation of racism, or you're saying one race is better than another race, one race is higher than another race, well, in certain respects, one internal structure and its unfoldment is hierarchically higher than another. And these different groups tend to show up in different forms and in different places. So there are differences in capacities between these inner beings and then to a large extent, but not exclusive extent, in the groups in which they tend to take incarnation. You know, I just saw some of the Veda hunters. You know, they have no clothes except the small loincloth, barefoot, and the hair is done in a certain way and so forth. You cannot throw them into Harvard University because interiorly the causal body is not sufficiently developed in order to make that possible. This is not racism. This is occult realism, and it in no way reduces the amount of love that have to be shown to all God's creatures, in all kingdoms, in all types of human beings, above, below, and in the greater kingdoms still. The factor of love is not reduced. In the factor of racism, the factor of love is definitely reduced. And it is made to seem that some human beings are forever inferior to others, and that is absolutely untrue. There are forms of life which temporarily lack the capacity of other higher forms of life, and which have greater capacity than other temporarily lower forms of life. But everything is moving towards perfection, and when you finally get down to it, the very core of everybody is perfection. The one and only being. We are that. So I sometimes have dialogue with my son, who's quite a philosopher, and he says, well, Dad, you know, this hierarchical system, it can be, it can lead into very separative action and can lead into racism and even, I suppose he didn't say it, but, you know, like genocide, where we get rid of inferior races and only the superior races exist. All of that is extreme illusion, right? It has nothing to do with the occult structure of things. This does have to be explained. But until people can accept the idea that they've been everywhere, have even been embodying an atom in the long trip, you know, how does it go, you know, in the Kabbalistic system? The mineral becomes the plant becomes the animal becomes the man becomes an angel, the angel becomes a god. I don't know if it ends there, but we're all gods to begin with, even the mineral. So we cannot confuse the outer form for the essence. And I think it's important when we discuss these kinds of hierarchical analyses, which can be so misused by those who read without the proper understanding, just the way the Secret Doctrine was read by Hitler and some of his group and by various type of extreme violent racists, and they fixed upon themselves, because the Teutonic race was the last developed in the Aryan root race. They called themselves the true Aryans, and they were the top of all possible human beings, and they had this persecution complex. Hitler himself had a tremendous such complex. He even was partially Jewish, so the story goes, and he conceived of the Aryan races, which had somehow, in his megalomaniacal, self-pitying state, had polluted the great and final Teutonic race, and that pollution had to be destroyed so that the magnificent Teuton could stand forth in all his glory. Well, you know, you come to the Secret Doctrine, and without a prepared mind, or with eons of selfishness behind you, lives of selfishness, which DK said was true of all those people, Hitler and his inner group, and then you start to read the Secret Doctrine, and what do you get? You get what you want to get, and you take this hierarchical system, and you find a way to exalt your own ego over everybody else, and it becomes extremely materialistic. DK said that there would have been extreme materialism. the most materialistic system you can imagine if the Nazis had prevailed. Well, you know, I go off on a little tangent here, but the reason that I do so is so that we can understand this is an objective study about the different stages of growth and development towards perfection, which every unit of life, every monad in extension will take, whether that monad is incarnating in the mineral, the animal, the vegetable, the human. They will take these steps. And so there's a great equality in it all. And from the final position of Libra and the monad, every monad is absolutely and utterly equal in essence to every other monad. The life demonstration may be differential in time and space, but the equality is there in essence, and that's what it really means, that all men are created equal, all things are created equal, all emanations have an essence which is equal to the essence of every other emanation. Okay, this is 3 hours and 30 minutes. I hope you can stand it. We have discussed a very important section. It is this table, and we can now, we did cross out already, the different kinds of egoic lotuses and their names. When it comes to 855 and following, this material was pretty well covered in Esoteric Psychology 2, where it was transported. The next thing, if I have the courage, is we'll get into monadic types. And then, well, then we'll see. Okay, friends, this is going to be it. So let's call this the end. We'll call this the end. Whoop. That's not what I want, is it? I don't want bullets anymore, do I? So we'll say, okay, well, just get rid of that and put that in. End of Egoic Lotus Webinar Commentary Program 10, 3 hours and probably 31 minutes, 32, 30, well, let's say 33 minutes, 3 hours, 33 minutes. And we'll begin with, and we have been in Treatise on Cosmic Fire, pages 840, what? 840 to 844. All right. Now I'm glad we can go quickly. 840 to 844. So we will continue with another subject, but always for the purpose of being able to relate these different factors to the unfoldment of the lotus itself and to our history. Beginning program, Egoic Lotus Webinar Commentary Program 11 somewhere. And we'll take care of that then. Okay, friends, that'll be it for the moment, and we will move on together. All the best. Let's keep studying and keep expanding our understanding and the understanding of all these relations, which will reveal the wholeness, the articulated wholeness of all. See you soon. Bye-bye.